Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Tactics Board. The hunt for a Carrow Road win continues for Norwich City, and after a week of plenty of off-the-pitch news, they are back at their home stadium trying to get some points on the board to end a disastrous run in the Championship in the last few games. Now, things have been simplified slightly by Mark Attanasio's backing of head coach Liam Manning. It seems that he's in the clear for now. But regardless of that, fans want to see improved performances. The team are still aiming for promotion to the Premier League. And with those two things in mind, they really need to turn things around as quickly as possible. They have an opportunity to do that in the lunchtime kickoff tomorrow when they take on the Tigers, who themselves have had a reasonably good start to the season, particularly away from home. So when you add up the factors, it's not looking particularly good for Norwich, but with a little bit more security, with a couple of players now back from injury, can they turn things around this weekend? That's what I'm going to take a look at on Tactics Board. First of all, showing you my predicted 11 and predicting the team that I think Manning will choose for tomorrow's game. Then we're going to come on to Hull, how they set up, some of their strengths and weaknesses, and how Norwich can exploit those. And then we're going to look at Matthias Kvistgaarden, the kind of role that he can play and the fact that he's now back from injury and how big that could be for Norwich as they look for reasons to be optimistic. But we're going to start with that predicted 11. So without further ado, here it is. So I've gone for Vladan Kovacevic in goal, Jack Stacey at right back, Kenny McLean at left back, Harry Darling and Jakov Medic in the centre of defence, with Mirko Topic and Pelle Mattsson in midfield, Jovan Makama on the right, Oscar Schwartau on the left, and Matthias Kvistgaarden just behind Josh Sargent up front. Now, I think one of the players a lot of people are expecting to be involved is Shane Duffy, particularly after Attanasio's comments on Canary Call, of course, along with backing Liam Manning. He spoke about a few other very important topics, and one of them was his view on Shane Duffy, who obviously hasn't played a minute for the club yet this season. Was not frozen out, but was certainly not a big part of the plans going forward in the summer. Was told that he could find a new club, and that club wasn't found. Duffy has struggled with a calf injury for a lot of the season as well, but he's just come back into availability. He travelled to Swansea, albeit he wasn't even on the bench. But Attanasio clearly feels that Norwich need a bit more experience. They need a few more leaders on the pitch and players who would kind of go to war, as Manning put it, about captain McLean after Swansea. Now, obviously, Attanasio's view can be a different thing to Manning's, and he said again that he isn't picking the team, he isn't forcing Manning to choose the players who he wants to choose. But this is where kind of the tactics side of football meets the off-pitch element. And if you're Manning and your boss, the owner of the club, wants to see Duffy in there, it kind of is a little bit difficult to turn around and keep him out of the team. But I think he will do that just because he hasn't played a single minute this season. He won't be particularly match fit. And clearly, Manning has already made a judgment on whether he can offer Norwich a lot in the Championship. He's had Rory McConville ahead of him for a lot of the time. McConville hasn't even played a minute so far in the Championship. And although there have been injuries, there have, of course, been issues that I think weren't foreseen going into the season. I just think it would be strange to completely change that view, chuck Shane Duffy in there when he's got no experience. I do think sometimes he can be underrated as a player. I'm not saying he's the saviour and he's going to change everything defensively, but he does a solid enough job in defence, and it doesn't feel like Norwich have done that of late. A couple of really poor goals to concede against Swansea, as good as the finishes were. So I could see why Manning might want to change, but for me, just because there's a lot of talk about it and just because Attanasio talks about it, it doesn't change the fact that Manning has to put the players on the pitch that he still believes are the best ones to do the job. And he hasn't come remotely close to thinking that about Duffy for the whole of the season. So I wonder why he would change now. So I'm not completely ruling it out, but if I had to bet on one side of it, I would say that probably Duffy doesn't come in, although maybe we see him on the bench and he has more of an active role to play than he has done at any other time. I think you look at the rest of the team and it's hard to see where the changes come from. Of course, we'll have an update on fitness from Manning at his press conference later today. I saw there were some pictures from the club of a man called Forson being back in training, and of course that was the plan, but given how long he's been out for, it's hard to believe that he would be close to a start at this stage. But Matthias Kvistgaarden, of course, came on as a substitute for Josh Sargent, I think just after the 70-minute mark on Saturday at Swansea, and it feels like he's quite an important player for them at the moment. Certainly Manning was hanging a lot on him coming back, and although one player isn't going to completely change things for a team that are currently 23rd in the Championship, it does feel like they've lacked that natural instinct and quality in the box. And even when they've got in good positions, they've got players like Oscar Schwartau, Liam Gibbs in there who aren't maybe natural goal scorers and haven't been in those positions too much in their career, whereas Kvistgaarden is obviously a proven goal scorer. He knows how to put the ball in the net, and if they can get the ball into the positions where Kvistgaarden can hurt Hull, which of course is a big if when you consider some of their creative problems. But I think they've created a couple of chances in the last few games. Derby, they were quite good in the first half at doing that. And if they can do that again, I think Kvistgaarden will be a big player for them. So I think he might come in. Maybe there will be some consideration given to his fitness, given it still is a little bit quick, given it, it was quite a long period out injured. There are a couple of other players coming back, Ben Krasene, Lucian Mahovo shouldn't be too far away, but right now it feels to me like Kvistgaarden is the only one who's really close enough, and the only one who's likely to inspire a change in that team lineup. But yeah, it feels like quite a wide open one, given Norwich have lost the last 5 games, so it will certainly be interesting what that team news looks like when it drops at 11:15 tomorrow. On to Hull then, and a team who have actually had a pretty good start to the season. I don't think many would have predicted that going into it, given some of the turmoil around the club, how difficult last season was for them as well. But they've done really well. A couple of really good results in the last few weeks. Beat Leicester at home, beat Birmingham 3-2 in a very entertaining game away from home. They've produced results both at their own ground and also away from home. But I think the way that they play at their best kind of suits playing against Norwich, to be honest. They're kind of better when they're sitting deeper, when they're counter-attacking. They're really good from wide areas. And although that sounds like a lot of Championship teams, where maybe they're slightly different is their high pressing. So a lot of teams in that sense, Millwall under Alex Neil, I think Middlesbrough under Rob Edwards as well, can press really high and can put teams under pressure, create chances that way. Middlesbrough created a lot of chances like that against Norwich. Millwall the same, and they're kind of aggressive throughout the whole game, and they try to impose themselves on the opposition, whereas Hull won't really do that at their best. When they're doing well, it's usually when they're sitting deep, soaking up pressure, stopping the other team creating chances, and then almost springing out of their shape and counter-attacking, getting balls into the box and being direct that way. In fact, when they have pressed high, that's where a lot of their problems have come from, when they've maybe been a little bit too loose, they've not been on it really, and it's been quite easy to play through them at times. So if they do come onto Norwich, if they do feel that pressure of kind of being the favourites for the game and trying to press high, that's maybe where Norwich will have the opportunity to exploit it, because Hull won't be at their best. Norwich won't have to break down a deep-sitting defence as they've struggled to at various times this season, and yeah, the task won't be quite as hard, but I don't think that's how Hull will set up. Of course, away from home, even though Norwich are 23rd, there's more of an onus from the supporters in the ground, particularly given the negative feeling there's been for Norwich to go and create the chances and to make the game about them, to dominate possession. And sometimes, that does work, and that positivity is what Norwich fans want. But I think it plays into Hull's hands a little bit. I think it would be better for them to try to play out, to almost invite the whole press and then play through that and get the ball into creative players and attacking players like Kvistgaarden, Schwartau, Josh Sargent in those attacking positions to try and score goals. But I expect Hull will sit deep, and that's maybe where Norwich struggle, but I think they did okay against a similar team in Derby in that first half. Derby probably weren't particularly good in possession either, so that didn't help. They weren't really ever able to relieve the pressure or create chances of their own on the counter-attack. But Norwich did move the ball quickly in that sense. They moved it forward. They had a few players who were willing to turn and take it from the defence and turn, quite slow possession into chances and get the ball into the box with through balls and things like that. They didn't have the quality of finishing, which you think Kvistgaarden might be able to help with if he does play. But I think Hull are just a little bit better than Derby were in that first half. They're more organised, they've got better players, and they can spring out and create problems on the counter-attack as well. So I think there is some pressure on Norwich to improve the way that they pass the ball through the thirds and create chances. But also out of possession, given they don't have much natural pace in their defence. If Hull do counter-attack quickly and they do try to do that, it's really important that Norwich are proactive, that they stop the counter-attacks at source with high pressing, that Jakov Medic and Harry Darling are on the front foot, winning headers sort of on the halfway line and things like that. Because if they don't do that, I think Hull have the capacity to get in behind and cause them problems in that sense. And I just wanted to touch on Kvistgaarden before we finish the video, because obviously I've mentioned him a lot already, which suggests that his return is quite a big positive for Norwich. Liam Manning's talked about him quite a lot, and maybe given the current predicament, there's a reason why he's looking for kind of positives. But I do think he brings some of the qualities that Norwich are lacking. I think for all of Josh Sargent's strengths, maybe the close control in the box, in tight spaces, isn't his best attribute. Kvistgaarden is more of a dribbler, more of a technical player who, if you're playing against a packed defence, can take the ball in tight spaces, can have through balls fired into him when he's under a lot of pressure, and then make something out of it, as he did a little bit against Coventry before, of course, he got that knee injury that's ruled him out over the last few weeks. I do also agree with Manning's assessment that they kind of need killer instinct. I don't think that's the only problem, which I think he kind of suggested. I think there are a lot of problems, but what certainly would have helped them pick up points in the last few weeks would have been having more finishers in there, having players who are more used to having shots on goal and killing off teams with their finishing. You look at Kvistgaarden's numbers, I think it was 23 goals for Brøndby last season. That shows you that even though the level is lower, he does have the capability when he's in front of goal, that mentality to take chances and to be ruthless in that sense. So I think he helps them there. He could also create his own chances a little bit with that dribbling ability. He likes to kind of drop slightly deep and almost carry the ball like a winger, but then cut in and finish his own chances. So I think that could help when Norwich are kind of trying to break a logjam and maybe struggling to get the ball through the thirds. So I think he helps with that. In the air, he's also underrated. And although maybe he's not quite the number 10 option that Norwich really need, maybe a Matt Forson is that, and we'll come on to that, I'm sure, in one of the coming episodes. He's more creative, certainly, than a sort of Liam Gibbs or Mirko Topic in that position, which is where Liam Manning has had to make do over the last few games. So I don't think he's the entire solution. I think Norwich have a lot to work on, but for me, Kvistgaarden should help them out, and we'll see what sort of impact he has tomorrow. Of course, we'll have all the coverage of the game, every kick covered across our channels. So if you haven't already, go to pinken.com/subscribe. Thank you very much for joining me on Tactics Board, and I'll see you for the next one.